All right, what is up, everybody? Welcome to episode 71 of Destination the Show. My name is Jamie Cameron, joined by Theo Tollefson. Theo, what's going on, buddy? How are you?
I'm doing better than our friend Jeremy, who is out sick for this one. So I'm going to fill in his role and try to do my best. But, doing well. Weather was warm to start this weekend, and now we're back to the frigid March temps. But how are you? You were just in Florida getting to see spring training baseball. How was
Oh,
that for you?
dude, I was in Fort Myers. Best week for me in recent memory. Warm, sunny, baseball being played everywhere. Absolutely loved it. It was great. We will definitely get into a full rundown of spring training. But I think for right now, we're gonna jump straight in because we are very excited today to be joined by a special guest. We're excited to welcome Twins pitching prospect Ty Langenberg to the show. Ty, thanks so much for joining us. How are you, and how has your spring camp been so far?
Thank you. It's been going really well. Appreciate you guys having me on. Body's feeling good. I'm definitely excited to get the season going.
Right on. Okay, we're gonna do a quick intro, Ty, of you. Just for folks who might be less familiar, right? So Ty was the Twins' 11th round pick out of the University of Iowa in 2023. And just to walk through some of these impressive 2024 numbers, 108 innings pitched across um, single A and high A, Fort Myers and Cedar Rapids. You posted a 3.67 ERA, 3.28 FIP, struck out 25.4% of batters, and walked just 6.6% of hitters you face. So, Ty, before we get into your 2024 season, all of that, we're gonna do a little bit of a rewind here. So, for folks who are less familiar with you, talk us through your journey in amateur baseball a little bit. And I'm specifically curious to know, when did you first realize that you could play at the next level in college ball? And why was Iowa the place for you?
Obviously, growing up my entire life, my family bled black and gold. We were huge Hawkeye fans, so Iowa being the only Division One baseball school in the state was obviously a huge draw. I mean, as an Iowa kid, I wanted to stay close to home, so that was just a huge draw for me. And going through high school, I didn't really realize, kind of that was what I wanted to do. I played football and basketball in high school, and it wasn't really until my junior year where I realized that this is what I wanted to focus on, and was lucky enough to end up at the University of Iowa, play under some amazing coaches in Rick Heller, Marty Sutherland, and Robin Lund. And I think it was middle about my sophomore year at Iowa was when I kind of realized that, hey, like you're kind of on a good trajectory, a good track, and this could be in your future. And obviously, after the end of my sophomore season, which was pretty successful, I went out to the Cape and had an awesome time out there. It was one of my favorite baseball experiences, and that was really, I guess, that summer ball experience in Cape Cod was really, the month or two I realized this is a legitimate, goal, something that I can actually achieve, play at the next level. And then just, moving through my junior year, it was like, all right, this is something I can accomplish, and let's just stay true to what I've been doing and hope for the best.
So yeah, I mean, being able to realize that summer going into your junior year that this was going to be something you could accomplish, you could really have a good chance of being drafted after your junior year at the University of Iowa. What was that experience like ahead of the draft, and did you have any idea of like the range you would be taken, and if teams were scouting you and how they were communicating with you if they were scouting?
So after I got into fall ball back at the University of Iowa after that pretty successful summer, I was in contact with a lot of different teams, a lot of scouts. It was pretty hectic to say the least. I would say a majority of the teams had been in contact with, but obviously some of them were kind of here and there. Hey, we want to let you know that you're on our radar, but that was more or less it for them. But it went pretty fast. It's honestly kind of a blur at this point between the fall stuff, going through the winter, and then just straight into the season. But it was just, yeah, I kind of reminiscing on it. It's just a huge blur to me.
Yeah, so when draft day did come on the calendar, and you knew that opportunity might be happening when it was the Twins who selected you and gave you the call to let you know you had been drafted. What was that experience like, and knowing you've been drafted from a team close to the state you grew up in?
It was pretty surreal. Moving to draft year again, it was a blur. I mean, I didn't really wasn't in contact with a whole lot of teams, and I don't really remember the Twins or really anybody being on my radar. I do know that when draft day came around, there wasn't a huge range. I had a successful summer, but my junior year wasn't as successful as I hoped it for. So there was a pretty wide range, and obviously we were just hoping for the best. I was aware that the Braves were probably going to be the team I ended up with, but then the Twins swooped in the 11th round and picked me up, which it was incredible. Growing up, I had family that lived in Minnesota, so there are many times in my childhood where I would go up to St. Paul and in Minneapolis, and I would watch the Twins play. I grew up a huge Twins fan, watching Joe Mauer, Justin Morneau, those guys. Wore number 7 when I was younger because of Joe Mauer. And yeah, just to have them, come around and decide, hey, we want you to, wear our colors and represent our organization was just incredible.
Yeah, I know a lot of kids who also grew up in Iowa could go be Cubs fans, or they're spread out through wherever they live in the state. So it's cool to know that you were drafted by the team you grew up cheering for.
Yeah, for sure.
Ty, walk us through your transition to professional baseball a little bit, right? Because I think this is something that's like a little bit murky for casual fans. Like, what is the life of a pitcher like immediately after they're drafted? And the Twins have become well known in recent years for their pitching development. So, what was their initial communication to you in terms of what they saw as your strengths as a pitcher and maybe areas of opportunity or areas where you could improve your game?
Immediately coming in, we had quite a few meetings, and it exactly as you said, it really discussed strengths and weaknesses, and just those general areas for improvements. And coming in out of college, my changeup was my best pitch. That was my bread and butter, just working fastball changeup, and I kind of understood that I had a little bit of a unique arm slot. In terms of like coming from my fastball and changeup combo. But obviously, they noted that I needed a slider, and moving on to higher levels, moving up through the system, you're going to need to have at least 3 pitches that you can be competitive with at all times. And that was a big adjustment for me coming from college, where I could get guys out with just fastball changeup pretty consistently. And days I had my slider, it was better days, and if I didn't have it, I could still get by with it. And that was really something that they noted, and I came to see extremely quickly was, guys are much better at seeing pitches, not exactly guessing, but just being overall, prepared, better approaches from hitters. So it really, dawned on me that I need to hammer down on getting, a slider and a cutter into my arsenal and being able to command those extremely well. And obviously still working on those today, trying to better those. But that was just like the initial evaluation. And my first couple of games in the low A, and then at the start of this past year, I definitely realized that was what needed to happen, and we continue to work on that. And obviously, kind of saw a little bit of success from that.
For sure, for sure. So something else I'm really curious about is, again, kind of sticking with transitioning into the pro game. Suddenly you have so much information at your disposal being communicated to you via the team. And I would also acknowledge here that, the University of Iowa has an outstanding reputation for developing young arms. So, not a knock on them at all. But you have so much information about how to optimize your arsenal, teams working to add velocity to guys, pitch shapes, pitch design. Do you enjoy that aspect of the game, or is that something you've kind of had to adjust to? And what have been some of your biggest kind of insights about your own game since being in the twin system?
Yeah, honestly, it was something that I picked up pretty early. I found a pretty, it was very enjoyable to me in college when I worked with Robin Lund. He was the pitching coach that I still talk to this day. He's a great role model for me. But he was really the person that introduced that love for the analytical side of the game, just understanding how my arsenal works, how coming from a little bit of a lower slop, how my fastball can play at the top of the zone, or how like my changeup could be deceptive, or how adding that slider, taking those next steps could really increase my odds of having success at the next level. But obviously, like you said, Iowa's very, very talented. They have a lot of the technology to kind of provide players with the chance to increase their arsenals and stuff like that. And it was a very easy transition, I would say, from Iowa to pro ball, just because I already had that knowledge and that love for the analytical side. And then coming here, obviously, it was kind of a little overwhelming at first, because at Iowa, I was used to having just a couple, one coach or a couple managers talking to me about that stuff. And all of a sudden it was like, hey, everybody knows exactly what this is, exactly what they're talking about. So it was a little bit of an input overload at first, with having many different coaches come up to me and just talk to me about my arsenal, stuff like that. But once I got to, into games and working with more of a, confined space, it kind of took off for me. Just being able to really understand what, one or two coaches were wanting from me, and then just kind of running with that until we decided like we're ready to move on to the next thing.
Yeah, let's go back to that pitch arsenal for a little bit. You talked about just mainly having a fastball and changeup throughout college, and the Twins have been very well known for drafting these college pitchers like yourself and trying to get a slider into your arsenal. So, what did you feel like was your best pitch when you were drafted, and where do you feel like some of those pitches are at now, and where that velocity is topping out at?
Yeah, coming out of college, I was pretty comfortable, 90, 92. And like I said, my bread and butter was my changeup. That was a pitch that I felt like I could throw in the zone at any time. I could throw for a swing and miss at any time. Just had all the confidence in the world at it coming in. And I had the slider that I had in college. I wanted it to be more of a sweeper. I wanted it to have a bigger profile, more of, like not really curveball, but just curveball-like movement horizontally. And quickly realized that was at this level, especially like having something that can go to my glove side like that, paired with my changeup that moves quite well to my arm side, was going to be a huge factor. So came in, they immediately started working with me on different pitch grips. The grip I had in college, I tended to I couldn't get around the ball. So they really, they switched it from just a traditional like two-seam slider grip like that. They started having me spike it, moved back deeper into my hands. And that was really the key to everything. All of a sudden I could start sweeping it up to 20 inches. I was throwing it slightly harder. And obviously that came to with putting on some extra weight. Since being drafted, I'm up about like 20, 25 pounds. So obviously the weight kind of factors into a little velocity kick. But velocity went from 90, 92 to on my best days, I can, reach back for a 95, 96. Which has definitely helps, obviously, the off-speed play up. But the slider has come a long ways, and I think that's something that's really attributed to my success.
Love it. You're a man prepared, Ty. You had a baseball ready to show us grips. We appreciate that. Let me ask you a question here just about kind of pitch development, because this is something we've talked to both coaches and pitchers about. And you've kind of alluded to, diversifying your arsenal, adding pitches here. Does it feel like a challenge when you are pitching in a game and you're a competitor and you want to get guys out and you want to go deep into games, but maybe the development goal for you in that game is to throw your brand new sweeper 25 times, and the org doesn't necessarily care quite so much about the results as getting game reps, pardon me, and kind of game testing something new in your arsenal? How do you kind of navigate that as a player, as a competitor, and try and kind of balance the development piece with trying to win?
It's a great question. It was something I realized coming in initially too. I kind of talked about, working on pitch design and stuff like that immediately, and figuring out how to get obviously outs at the next level too. But it was a complete mentality shift coming in college. Obviously, as a starter, especially, the goal is to go out there. Obviously, you want to put up zeros, but you're supposed to be the horse. You're supposed to go out there. You're supposed to eat innings. And coming in, that was definitely a mentality of mine. I'm like, oh, I need to. I don't care if I sit, 90 miles an hour, like lower velo, as long as I can get through innings, put up, zeros or decent stats. And that was something that had to completely shift, especially at the start of this past year. I went out there for my first start, and I remember I got knocked around, but I was like, hey, I ate up 5 innings. I might have given up 5 runs, but I ate 5. And I had to have a nice sit down conversation with the coaches, like, hey, we don't care if you go 5 innings. Like, we want you to work on your velocity, work on your sweeper, work on, cutter, sinker, whatever you're adding to your arsenal. We don't really care about those results. And they're just kind of like, as you develop, those results will come. We'll see those results happen. And it was kind of something for me that I was like, are we really sure? It was a little tough to believe at first. But once I started to buy into that, started to see the development really progress, and of course, I started to see some more results. And obviously, as a guy that always chases success too, like, I love to see that. So that was really something, after a couple of weeks I bought into, and the rest of the year was pretty smooth sailing with that.
Right on. Yeah, I love that. I think that's a fascinating insight. One more question before I turn it back over to Theo here, Ty. I'm curious about like the mental side of the game and or other differences that you have experienced between the college game and the pro game. Obviously, you alluded to one there a little bit. It's much more kind of process over results. What's your approach to the mental aspect of pitching? And how, if at all, has that changed for you as you've transitioned into pro baseball?
I think mentally approaching college batters, it's more of, I feel like I can throw a lot of this stuff just over the plate, over the middle. I'll have good results, and obviously in college, there was a big emphasis on don't walk guys, you got to throw strikes. So I think mentally, that's what I always thought of. And then switching here, obviously, you want to throw all your stuff in zone. But for a guy, obviously starting out in the org too, who doesn't have all the nasty stuff that all these other guys have already developed, I quickly realized that, not that I need to like nibble when I'm pitching on the edges of the plate, but there's definitely more of that kind of process. Like, oh, if you execute, a sinker inside, then you can probably go with a sweeper slightly off the plate. It's just more of playing to your misses, more or less. I think in college too, it was a lot of, oh, if I miss up an arm side or if I miss inside to a righty, like, ooh, like I need to get that more in the zone, versus now it's more of, okay, I missed inside with a sinker. And now that really opens up the outside of the plate for, a cutter or even a fastball away or anything, just really learning to play off my misses was a big learning factor.
Love that.
Well, you had your first year of pro ball this last season, and you were able to make it up from low A Fort Myers up to Cedar Rapids before the season was over. And you just mentioned recently that, success is something you strive for with every outing you get. So what do you think really helped lead to that success to move up from one level to another before the season was over?
I think it was definitely just realizing that, my miss distance, I guess, is something that really plays into it. I mean, there are a lot of times as I was, going through the process of the low A that, oh, like if I get 0-2, like I can miss with my sweeper, like in the other's batter's box and be okay. And it was kind of, as I got to the later stages of the low A, I started to figure out like, hey, I need to be competitive with these pitches at all times. I can't just waste a pitch just because it's 0-2. Because the coaches were very, adamant with me. Hey, at the next level, as you continue to go up, hitters, like, they're going to see that right away. And then next thing you know, it's going to be 3-2 and you're in danger of walking the guy. So they kind of let me know that. And then obviously when I got promoted to Cedar Rapids, of course, they were right. I immediately saw kind of the whiff rates go down, just the chase rates go down overall too. And I kind of
Did you disconnect there for a second?
Okay, let's pause. All right, guys, quick, small technical difficulty. So we'll backtrack a little bit. Ty, you're in the middle of a great question, or a great answer, pardon me, about your kind of miss rates and transitioning from low A to high A and what the new challenge there was. So take it away, part two.
Yeah. So, like I said, once I got to high, I really realized that those whiff rates, those chase rates went down. I realized that I need to be much more competitive, and that was really when the misses, not just miss distance, but hey, I missed inside. Now I can like open up outside the plate. That's where that mentality really took off for me, and I think that was something that once I made those adjustments after the first couple of starts, I started to see more success, and obviously, that's what I wanted to see. So I ran with it the rest of the year and turned out pretty well.
So was that one of the many things you took from the end of the season into the off season as this is something I want to work on? So whether I'm starting at Cedar Rapids or elsewhere, for 2025, I can work more on getting more whiff rates against hitters when you're at this level. And, what are some of those other things you're working on this off season to really make sure you were in the best shape you could be for spring training?
Yeah, obviously weight gain was one thing that they kind of hammered with me right away. We want you to put on some weight, hoping that the velocity would increase, and if velocity increases, so will your stuff. So that was something that they just kind of felt. You increase your weight, you're gonna kind of increase everything overall. It'll be up a tick. But really just kind of honing the profiles with my pitches too, getting the slider to be much more consistent, trying to throw it as hard as I can, being able to just have those extremely consistent profiles to know what my pitches are going to do at any given time when I throw them in a game. Um, and then obviously just being around the zone. Eventually, just ideally the command part of things would come together even more so, and I could be able to spot inside, outside, kind of throw those things wherever I want to, and obviously knowing how they move, be able to adjust accordingly.
Right on. So, Ty, I want to ask you a little bit about the Twins system. Are there other pitchers in the Twins system that you follow, that you enjoy watching in particular? Who do you like to watch? Who do you like to study? Who are guys that intrigue you in the Twin system outside of yourself?
I mean, I've been around Connor Prelip a lot. I know he gets a lot of attention, but for good reasons. I mean, he's a guy that just goes about his business, seemingly casual, but there's definitely a high level of intent with everything he does. And obviously, he's a guy that's just fun to watch throw. I mean, he's got extremely dominant stuff, but from a mechanical standpoint, he does pretty much everything right. I mean, he's definitely got down to a science. In catch play, he does everything pretty much the exact same because he knows his routine. So just kind of looking at a guy like that. I mean, obviously I enjoy watching him throw, but playing catch with him too, day to day, just seeing how he goes about his business. It's very casual, but there's still a high level intent and with everything that he does. So I definitely like that. And then obviously I've worked with CJ Culpepper a lot too, and it's kind of the flip side too. He's always striving for that next level, in catch play, in games, stuff like that. So it's kind of a flip side where he's not exactly as casual. He's always chasing that next step. So it's kind of cool to see both, where a guy that's he's very casual, seemingly casual at least, and goes about his day doing the exact same thing. And then you've got a guy like CJ who's open to a lot more variation, maybe a tweak here, tweak there, but obviously it ends up being exactly what he wants it to be.
Love that. And one more question about the org, Ty. The Twins, we touched on this a little bit earlier, but they've had a ton of success just in developing arms, period. But if you look at their track record in the draft, you've got guys like Bailey Ober, 13th round, Zebby Matthews, 8th round pick, David Fester, 13th round pick, all either established big leaguers, or certainly knocking on that door. Is that something that kind of excites you? Affirms you, makes you feel confident in leaning into the coaching that the organization is giving you, just seeing the track record that they've established over the past 5-6 years with developing young arms?
Yeah, it makes me. I'm just extremely excited to work with all the coaching staff. I mean, in my eyes, that tells me that it's something like throughout the entire, starting at the FCL level all the way through the big league level. All these coaches are on the same page to know exactly what we want to work with, and the same with the coordinators. The coordinators do an extremely just incredible job working with those coaches and players and establishing a player plan and things that goals moving forward for that season, whether it be a couple weeks or if it is a couple months down the road, things like that. So seeing those guys have high level of success, I definitely understand, like, as they move through the system, it was them working with those coaches over the course of a season or a couple of seasons that helped them get to that point. So I saw it when I first showed up that right away that they know what they're talking about and they understand what it's going to take to get to that level. So I've definitely bought into that entire mentality.
Love it.
So I wrote this a little wrong on our rundown on the side here, but do want to know what you think your nastiest pitch is, and then as well as who you think has the nastiest pitch in the Twin system, whether it's be someone you've been a team of or someone you have had in the minors above you, like CJ Culpepper, and haven't had the chance to play with yet. But who do you think has that nastiest pitch, and what's yours?
Coming out of the draft, I definitely would have said it's my changeup. I thought that was an outlier pitch to me, but at this point, I've really fallen in love with my slider. It's come a long ways. I'm starting to throw it harder. I'm starting to see a lot more success with it in games, and I think it's something that's really going to carry me. Hopefully through Cedar Rapids and as I continue through the org. But it's something that I've definitely fallen in love with. Obviously, there's still a lot to work on with it. It's not quite that bread and butter status yet. But I think it's definitely up there right now. And I think the changeup is just something that definitely supplements it to the point where the slider plays much better than it might normally just on its own. But speaking of sliders, I mentioned Connor Prelip. His slider is something else. I don't think I've ever seen something like that. At any point in my career, a guy that's got something so tight and just can consistently land it like that, consistently generate swing and miss. So, if I had to trade, that would probably be something I would trade for. But
Yeah.
It's definitely a pitch that kind of makes my jaw drop every time. But yeah, I mean, aside from that, faced a lot of hitters this year, and a lot of the hitters that I face, there's not really a guy that stands out. I don't think there's a guy that I've dominated or a guy that's dominated me this year either. Hopefully it doesn't come to that this year. I'd hate to, have a guy digging against me and me just worry about what he's going to do to me. But so far, haven't had that. Hopefully we don't come to that.
Let's go. We love the confidence. Yeah. All right, Ty, one more question, and then we'll get you out of here. Let's fast forward to the end of the 2025 season. You're kind of wrapping up next fall. And what's like a 90th percentile outcome for you for this season? What are your goals? Where do you hope to be if we were having this conversation again in September, October time?
My biggest goal right now is to, just continue the level by level. I know a lot of guys kind of, the general goal is one level a year. So ideally, a huge success of a year would be to end up in Wichita at some point during the year. But really, just from a statistics standpoint, I would love to see my my whiff rates. If I were to get promoted, my whiff rates, my chase rates, just my overall velocity as well. I'd like to see all those tick up or at least stay the same. The big thing is I don't want to see anything regress. Mm-hmm. But I would love to end up in Wichita, keep those whiff rates, chase rates, strikeout rates, keep those up, keep the walk rate down, and then obviously keep trying to build velocity. That's definitely something that we've hammered in spring training thus far, and we're hoping to see a tick or two this year.
Beautiful. Well, Ty Langenberg, we are so appreciative of your time. We know that you have a very, very busy schedule. So thanks so much for joining the show, and good luck for the 2025 season.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Ty.
You're welcome.
All right. That was great.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was awesome. So that was kind of a special bonus weekend episode to get us back on track after spring training. We will be back on in the middle of the week with a rundown of spring training action, roster battles, updates on some exciting prospects I had a chance to see in person. So we will look forward to catching up with people later this week. Thanks so much to Ty Langenberg. Hope you guys enjoyed the show.